Hey guys, it's Josh here, and I'm back for another what seems to be a weekly discussion where we're spotlighting um, black and white relationships, and we're having conversations, just good old-fashioned talks, something that you can do with anybody. Doesn't even have to be a black person if you're a white person, but we're talking about important subjects, and we're getting to know each other at a deeper level than just the surface. So the reason we're having these conversations is to build a bridge essentially from where we've been historically in the past with race relations in our country, and with what's happened in the past couple months, we really I want to try and do something to improve things, and the one form that I have here is video, and so hopefully you guys have been enjoying the videos that we have put out. We've done 4 previous, and they've been pretty good, I think, and some really good content, and we're about to have some more great content. And I'm really excited to introduce somebody who is near and dear to my heart and who we've known for a couple years. Met them through church, and they're really good people. Our very first interview was actually with this person's husband, Mr. Tino Boone. I introduced to you the better half. Miss Kelli Boone. Miss Kelli Boone, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me for a conversation. I just said a little bit about you. Can you share a little bit more about yourself? Who's Kelli Boone?
I grew up in Fulton, New York, which is a very small town north of Syracuse, upstate. And so I lived there pretty much all my life until I went to college. I went to college in Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. That is where I met my husband, Tino. And from there, I took a year off from school and then went to Long Island. And that's where I went to grad school and got my master's in social work. Worked in both foster care, worked as a program director down in Georgia, which is where Tino was when we got engaged. And so I worked at a nonprofit there that served people with disabilities. And it's where we started our real estate investing journey. And then for the past 2.5 years, we've been here in Columbus. And so here in Columbus is where I've taken a break from my career, and I've kind of focused on just going on like a personal journey of, kind of discovering like who I am and, what do I really want to do with my life. And, so I've done some stuff with like a real estate business, and I've also worked part-time as a nanny for 1.5 years. And pretty soon here, I'm gonna be starting a family, if you can't tell already. So.
That's not a bowling ball in their belly. That's a legit human being. Yeah. So that's one of the ways that me and Kelli and I and even Tino have connected is we're part of a real estate investment group, but long before then they've actually owned a few investment properties themselves, a couple in Georgia, a couple here, and they're doing really well for themselves, and it's a great way for them to build some passive income, some wealth, and thinking about the future. Real estate's a great way. That's my real estate plug of the day. This is not a real estate conversation, although we are sitting in the house that we bought here they live in Gahanna, great area. So well, thanks Kelli for introducing yourself. Icebreaker question. You can have fun with this if you want, or you can go like serious. What is something about yourself that you hope will change someday, but probably never will?
So I would say I'm a person who is very slow in taking action. And so that is something that I really would like to change. I would like to become a person that's more aggressive about going after, the things that I want in life and stuff like that. And so I've been trying, but very difficult. I'm just a very slow, strategic, methodical person, but hoping to work on that.
We'll get to the shirt here in a moment, but it's just me twisting the knife a little bit. Well, if you want it to change, then it'll change, dagnabbit, right? Yeah. All right, so let's jump into the meat of the conversation. We've had enough fun, dagnabbit. Let's talk about the serious stuff. Growing up, you've shared with me in the past that growing up, you grew up in a very white area. Talk to me about the divide you felt maybe growing up, and then if you've got any experiences with racism through your journey to this point.
Yeah, so where I grew up, demographics, it's 98% white, less than 2% black. So it was very rare for me to have a black classmate until I got to like junior high or high school, where classes were larger. So, but it would be like band or gym. And so the only other black people that I got to interact with growing up were my family members who lived in the same city. And so I, maybe several years ago I would have said like, oh, I didn't, really experience like racial issues and stuff growing up. But what I experienced most growing up were what are called microaggressions, which are basically those like everyday, subtle, intentional or unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate a bias or a stereotype about a marginalized group. And so it can manifest itself in like jokes or comments. So things like, jokes about like fried chicken and watermelon and, how high can you jump and can you swim and stuff. And so like a lot of what I got was like just being light skinned and having green eyes. People would, come up to me and they'd be like, oh, your eyes are so pretty. Like, what are you? Kind of like, you can't just be black. What are you? And, both of my grandmothers are not black. I have one grandmother that is white, and I have another grandmother who's Native American and Irish. And if she has black heritage, I don't know about it. So I actually grew up not identifying as a black person. I identified as a mixed race person. And, I think part of that was just kind of being uneducated. When I got to college, like I learned like, well, all black people are actually mixed because of things like the raping of slaves and, now interracial marriage and stuff like that. So, where that person falls in the lineage varies, but I didn't identify as a black person because like the people were closer to me, like it was a grandparent. And so a couple of the things that like I would get was like, oh, I remember being in high school and this, was just kind of standing there waiting for class to be dismissed, and this, white girl turns to me and she's like, oh, you're the prettiest colored girl I've ever seen. And on the surface, it can kind of sound like a compliment, but like this is an example of a microaggression. And I just kind of like I said thank you, and then I turned to like my friends who were standing behind me, and we just kind of like looked at each other funny and, laughed it off. And then what felt off to me was like her using the word colored, because even back then, like that's not the term that people used. People used black. So like felt a little weird for her to use colored. But like, learning later is that like when, research and data shows that people consider black people to be the least attractive race in comparison to all others. And so when people make comments like that, it's black people are considered to be, unattractive, but you're an exception. So it's like, it can sound like a compliment, it's, and what they don't realize that what they're saying is hurtful. But yeah, so. But
they're not on the receiving end of it, right?
Right, yeah.
I can only imagine being like 1 or 2% of my school growing up, and that's the way I grew up. I grew up in a almost predominantly entirely white school, and I mean, you out there in viewerland or whatever, like, can you imagine being an extreme minority where you don't have anyone that looks like you? And especially being a kid with a fragile psyche, learning and discovering who it is you are. I'm sure that has led to a lot of the things like whatever you just said, that microaggression, like that seems like you've done some research and stuff into this. You brought up some statistical data and stuff, so this is important information for you. And you went to school for social work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So taking care of other people is obviously important to you. One of the things you said is African American, or the black person is universally known or thought of as the least attractive race. Is that what you said? So I saw this on Facebook. I think somebody posted it about when you search professional hairstyles, it's all white pictures, all people of white race, like entirely. And when you search unprofessional hairstyles, it's literally only black people. And what made me think about that was what you just shared, but also like your hair is what was in some of those pictures as being unprofessional. And I think those are those many biases that we have in our heads. You see somebody walking down the street with an afro or something, like, well, maybe there's a thought that goes through your mind, when actually that doesn't define who that person is. It doesn't make them any smarter or any less smart than anyone else, and yet we've already judged the book by the cover. So it's important to, we talk about like leaving these conversations with a tangible, like, go do. Well, double check yourself. If you're having these microaggressions, or like, think before you speak. We shouldn't be like backhand complimenting people. Like, you're the prettiest anything. If you were to insert any other word in there, like you're just minimizing your compliment, really. So thanks for sharing that stuff. You're about to have your first child. You gotta be excited.
I am.
Baby Reina. Reina means
queen in
queen.
Spanish.
So she's waiting for the queen to come. Can I tell the story real quickly? So we've got a prophet in our midst here. I have to share this. It's incredible. So anyways, we got to know each other probably first and foremost at a thing our church puts on. It's called Couples Camp. So my wife and I were hanging out with these two crazy kids, and she felt a prompting and shared it with us around the fire that night, that she was gonna go to India, right? I shouldn't tell the story. You should tell that one story, but go ahead.
Just really
tell a quick 3 lines.
So I felt this prompting, where it was like, go to India, and there was like a thought that I initially wanted to ignore, and it was like, you'll have your kids in India. And I was like, that could mean one of 3 things. It could mean we'll literally birth our kids in India, which I was like, nah, that's not happening. Or like, we'll live there at a certain point with our kids, or we'll just like, go there from time to time and do work in India. And so we decided to sign up for a Go Trip that our church puts on, and so we went to Mumbai, India, late October, early November this past year, and it was there that we conceived our first child.
So those of you who question faith, it's incredible. Like when you listen to those promptings, what can happen, and Kelli is living testament to I guess faith and going where you're prompted to go. Sorry about the sidebar. I had to get that in. It's amazing to me. Literally amazing and awe-inspiring too. Listen to your gut, I guess, is the moral of the story. So you're about to have your first child. I'm going to ask this after I say something. So it's been about a month and a half since George Floyd event happened. And when it happened first, social media, the news, everything was all Black Lives Matter, it felt like, right? I don't know about you guys, and I don't know about you, but I feel like the flame that was, raging has like been put out. I don't see anything anymore hardly on social media. I should probably watch more news, but I'm sure that has gone by the wayside a little bit as well. I think it's important that we don't lose sight of social injustice, because just because it was a month and a half ago doesn't mean there's still not social injustice happening out there. So the conversations, the rage, the way the minds were working about how can we improve this, well, I don't want to be sweeping that under the rug. I think it's important and imperative as a country to continue these conversations a year from now, 2 years from now, just to prevent these things hopefully from happening in the future. Your child's about to be born. What is your thought about the social structure right now, of the social perception of race, and are you scared about like her upbringing?
Mm-hmm. I feel like this time is a little bit different. I would say yes, I agree things have died down. I do still hear and see people talking about it on social media, but maybe that's just because I follow more Black people. You know, I have a lot of Black friends and stuff from college and whatnot that are speaking out. I would say that I wouldn't use the term scared. You know, when it comes to like raising her in this world, I think if I was bringing a son into the world right now, I think that the emotion would be more fear, but I definitely have concerns right now. Like growing up, my parents didn't have conversations with me about like, what do you do when you encounter a police officer? This is how you stay safe, or, you know, whatnot. And so I don't yet know how to have that conversation with her. But I think some of the things that I'm concerned about is, you know, thus now being out in the suburbs, like just lack of diversity in schools, which is the same thing that I experienced growing up. I'm concerned about things like her hair being considered a distraction in the classroom. There are stories about little Black girls going to school and being sent home because their hairstyle was a distraction to their classmates, or even teachers cutting off pigtails, like cutting off their hair. So that's something I'm concerned about. I would say like when she's an adult, like, you know, the wage gap and pay equity, when, you know, she starts her career. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is that my love and praise for her, like as a mother, won't be enough to counteract the treatment that she receives outside of the home. And, you know, that she'll have to go through the same hard, painful journey that like I've had to go through in terms of like learning to love myself and like who I am, and, you know, redefining my identity and loving my hair and all that kind of stuff. It's been very difficult, like having to do that as an adult, as opposed to like that confidence and self-esteem being instilled like from childhood.
That's deep. Thanks for sharing. These are things that like a father, you know, I never worry about my kid's self journey, right? But perhaps I should probably more. You run a blog.
I do.
And just describe the blog. Talk to us, what's it about?
So the blog started in Georgia, right before we left. And basically at that point in my life, I was kind of like waking up every day, miserable and unsatisfied with life. And I was just kind of like, why am I like waking up every day unhappy when I have all these things that we're told, you know, we need to possess, like in order to be happy and successful. And so I just kind of started documenting like, you know, my personal journey and what I felt like trapped in the rat race. And I realized that I guess my path had been like predetermined, right? Like go to school, get good grades so you can go to a good college and, you know, graduate, get a degree, get a good job and a decent salary, and then work for 40 years, and maybe you'll have a couple of years to enjoy your life before you like have health issues and die, right? Like I feel like, the American dream.
The American dream.
Yeah. And I was like, So I realized, like, I don't know what fills me up. I don't know what brings me joy. I don't know what I really want in life. I don't know who I am. So I just kind of started documenting this journey of like redefining my identity and learning like who I am and what do I like and what do I want to do with my life. And I know that like what I craved most was freedom. And part of that journey has been like breaking free from things like fear, trauma that I've experienced in my life, and my identity being based on work and what I do and my job title and how much I make and other people's opinions about who I am as a person and stuff like that. So it just kind of became a place where I could be vulnerable and raw and just kind of talk about that. And so what it turned into, is just kind of like, initially it was documenting the personal journey, and then after about a year I just kind of rebranded it to be more about like just the theme of freedom in general, and so talking about topics within that context. And so I developed an interest in the human trafficking while I was here in Columbus, and that's what our mission trip was based on. And so I wanted to bring that like mission focus into it as well. And so there is an organization in India called Free Set, and it is where our church gets all of their t-shirts from. And so Free Set employs women who are at risk of or have experienced human trafficking or exploitation, that could be sexual or labor. And so these shirts, basically the blog is called Uncaged Thoughts, and the tagline is Break Through, Be Free. And so these are the t-shirts that I purchased in support of that organization.
It's a very soft t-shirt, and I like the logo. So Kelli was trying to get up the inspiration to order these said t-shirts, and you ended up doing it, and they turned out great. And I think that we can all identify with like that self-discovery piece, but also wanting to be free of that rat race of what the American dream really is supposed to be. We all, at the end of the day, I think, want freedom, and she's just putting the pen on paper or the hands on the keyboard and maybe writing something that might connect with you. So I want to wrap this up. Where can we find your blog?
So at uncagedthoughts.com, and that's UNKAJED thoughts.com.
Okay.
So on social media as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I'm sure there's a lot of vulnerable stuff in there, but you are an artist, an entrepreneur, and you have found, some semblance of freedom and hopefully yourself along the way. The woman that I know here is a very strong woman. I'm in business with this woman, and she's got a great mind, and she's a very loving person as well. So I want to end this with, we always say we want to walk away from this conversation with some things that maybe can help us improve ourselves. Do you have one or two items that you think might be helpful to people to hear?
Sure. I would say the first one I'm going to talk about in the context of like being a parent, because that is what's about to happen right now for me. But I would say, it starts in the home and from a very young age, right? Like racism is taught. And so one of the things, so I worked part-time as a nanny, and one of the things that I really enjoyed about that family was that, like, it's a white family, but they buy books that feature Black characters and Black stories with like natural hairstyles and whatnot. And things like multicultural or skin-colored crayons and colored pencils. Like when I grew up, the only color I could draw with was like the peach crayon, right? Like I couldn't draw a person that looked like me. So things like that, just, you know, or like they have brown baby dolls and stuff. So I would say like making your home like
More reflective of
yeah,
the world
of
around
the world, yeah.
That's
And I would say the second is speak up and use your voice. I don't know if a lot of people of color are okay with saying this, but we need white people to do the work. And you know, the same way that like when it comes to disparities between men and women, we need men to do the work, right? Like in terms of like systemic racism, it's white people that are in those positions of power, and they're the ones making laws and rules and regulations, right, that impact other people. And so I would just say like use your voice, speak up, even if it's like you're sitting with a group of friends and someone makes a joke that perpetuates a stereotype about a marginalized group. Use your voice, right? Like, and chances are, maybe if you feel uncomfortable, well, how uncomfortable would I feel, like being in that same room when that's happening? And so, speak up, use your voice. Men are more likely to listen to men, right? And so I think a white person is more likely to, you know, feel the sting of another white person confronting them about what they said or the behavior that they're exhibiting.
Sure, it makes sense. I think one of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation is something I hadn't really thought of before: microaggressions. I love the term, not necessarily what it means, or finding myself thinking back through my history of when I've maybe said something that I thought was okay but could be totally interpreted a different way. And I guess the tangible go-do is to just really think before I say anything, to take that deep breath and you know, not speak too quickly. Be slow to speak, right? Quick to listen. Hopefully we can all be quick to listen to our counterparts out there. Thanks for tuning in, Kelly. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited for you and for Tina and for baby Raina, because she's going to be growing up in a wonderful household full of love and warmth. And just appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.